Ja, meine Damen und Herren, für mich ist es jetzt der letzte Auftritt bzw. die letzte Moderation für diese 2 Tage auf der Zukunft Personal. Ich übergebe jetzt quasi die Staffel oder das Mikrofon an Julius Eiler. Er ist Human Capital Management Account Executive bei Oracle und er wird hier gleich das Panel moderieren, bei dem es darum geht, ich sage es erstmal nur ganz grob, wie Führung aussieht, wenn sich ein Ökosystem komplett ändert. Er führt das thematisch gleich weiter ein und stellt auch die Panelisten persönlich vor. Ich darf mich an der Stelle bei Ihnen verabschieden. Danke für Ihre Teilnahme und Ihre Aufmerksamkeit, die Sie jetzt noch dem Panel widmen und auch nochmal Danke an unsere Dolmetscher. Ich wünsche Ihnen jetzt hier gute Unterhaltung. Bitte schön.
Ja, vielen Dank und thank you very much. Welcome everyone here in the crowd and thanks for joining us for this next 60 minutes under the headline Leadership in a Business Ecosystem. As you know, everyone here, everyone in the world outside is talking about digitalization, how a business changes, how a company has to change. And of course, all this leads to a big and massive change in the style of management and in a style of how you have to lead your company. In the private life, these changes arrived already. Think about Netflix, Spotify, Uber, and so on. You all know what I'm talking about. But companies are not always as fast as you might be. And today we have 3 very interesting participants joining us in this panel discussion. Let me introduce you to Kim Dabbs from Steelcase. Kim is a global director for innovation at Steelcase, and her job basically means that she's leading the innovation in the whole organization and also other topics like social community and so on, but she will give you an overview later on. And Kim is living in Munich. She's Korean, American born, lives in Munich, and for that obviously loves the Oktoberfest. The second lady here in the middle is Isabella. She's from Austria, living in Vienna, and is an executive advisor for the Global Peter Drucker Forum. For those who don't know, the Peter Drucker Forum is called the Davos of Management. It's a yearly conference taking place in November in Vienna, and her job is to get the most interesting speakers there to connect the whole ecosystem and to give the headline of this. And last but not least, on the left from your side, my colleague, Mr. Joachim Skura. He's a strategy director, Germany, for our HCM organization, and he's going to talk about a very interesting study he did together with the WHU University here in Germany. And after these 3 speakers gave you an overview of, about their topic, we are going into a panel discussion. And of course, we are happy to involve every one of you into that discussion. So, I'm going to hand over to Kim, who's going to introduce herself, I think, again. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Kim Dabbs. I'm Global Director of Social Innovation for a company called Steelcase, which is an American company, but we have offices all throughout the world. We deal predominantly in designing work experiences for the future of work, and I would love to hear more about the study that you did before we dive into work experiences as well, because I think this will give us a really beautiful foundation for how we move forward in the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Joachim Skura. So normally we would say ladies first, but the ladies decided that it's me first. So hope you can live with that. It's a little bit funny. So I'm, let's say, the 2 of us are German speakers. We could do that in German too, but we decided as it is, if we have somebody non-native speaker, we do it as we do it in our corporate environment as well. We do it in English. I wanted to share a couple of ideas with you. Let me see where we are. You can see it. Right. We ran a really interesting Good. Let's see, is it better now? All right. Did you hear my name? Did you hear that the lady sent me first? Okay. All right. We did an interesting study with the WHO, and the WHO is a well-known university here in Germany. And actually what we embarked on like 1.5 years ago was this insight where we said, like, if we do attend fairs, conferences like this one, I always get pointed into, I get pieces of advice. I should do chatbot. I should do artificial intelligence. I should do A, B, C. And sometimes it's entirely conflictionary. And I was like thinking, this is weird. On the one hand, everybody is saying, you should do that and then you will have some effect. But in reality, we see this super big mismatch of technological progression and productivity. And we wanted to really have a fact-based insight here to be able to see, okay, how does it net together, technology and productivity and the bottom line business outcome? And this is where we investigated in. And now some of the aspects which I will lay out to you, just roughly, because I just have a quick intro of 7 minutes, and typically this is squeezed in a presentation of 45 minutes, so this is a challenge in itself. So super roughly, now we have proof of several constellations which all of you encounter in reality. So we really try to open up the black box. We know that digital is everywhere and moving into things, into processes, but hardly anybody really can assess what the effects will be. And it's all about, and I think this picture kind of summarizes this very well, it's all about creating something which we call a dynamic capability in an organization to win this head-to-head race against your competition, to create a mixture of assets, processes, skills, which gives you this tiny little something to stay ahead. And this is something which is, from my perspective, really changing the game and even the perception of HR. How are we able to contribute to achieve this little something? What we did is we created a huge questionnaire, 377 questions, and typically everybody backs out of and said like, oh no, please, I do not want to answer all these questions. But once we netted together technology and productivity, it blew out of the roof. We got so many replies, and normally you would be happy if you get 250 or 500. We got 6,450 replies all around the globe, which is well spread over the 2-3 continental regions, Europe, Asia Pac, and America, North America. This is how the survey circled. And we are well spread over industry and hierarchy levels, so that we can say we have a robust foundation of data here. It all summed up in 2.5 million data points, and so now the challenge is with the remaining 2 minutes to explain you what you can do with 2.5 million data points. It's all about creating, or ideally, when we think about organizations, we have this picture in our mind where we say like, okay, it would be perfect if everybody would row in the same direction. And if everybody is self-energized, is looking with a good sense of consciousness and looking for the funding for projects. And this is true. If you achieve that, then people are self-running and yeah, you do not need to motivate them externally. But this change does not come overnight. It takes some time to change this attitude and culture that people burn for their own things. So it's more a marathon in comparison to a sprint. And you can only achieve this marathon, we have a couple of now facts proving that, if your people really are super engaged and if you give them the possibility to shine in your organization. Let me go fast forward. So typically what we do see in organizations is we want to achieve some kind of flexibility. We investigated here as well. But in reality, it is a little bit more like we are stuck in doing the same thing all over again. New fiscal year comes and we maybe release a couple of initiatives, but not so many times we are truly able to change things. It's not that easy for my corporation. We are 140,000 people organization worldwide. Change does not, again, here come overnight. And I think there's only one true vehicle to really step out of the hamster wheel, and this is evidence. If you're able to kind of put numbers behind your logics, then you're able to really change
things in your organization. You need to come up with some reasonable input-output ratio. If this is not feasible for you in your organization, you most likely will not succeed. So we've been asking, so just to share a little insight with you, what we, for example, found out in the study, because we had, like, as I said, 2.5 million of these insights. We've been asking people, okay, if evidence is such a big thing, would you guys be okay if we challenge your business decisions with data? And two-thirds said, no, we better do not do that. And I was truly wondering when we had that number, what kind of business decisions are taken out there, because if two-thirds better do not want to challenge then this. And it's not surprising that, let's say, the usage of data is not well spread and it's not standard in the decision-making process. So data, for example, was a big gap, which was a big room for improvement. And we've been asking further, and for example, then said, okay, if data is not the area how you back up your decisions, how do you do your decisions? And 40% said, like, we are taking hippo decisions. Do you know what that is? A hippo decision? It's the opinion of the highest paid person in the room. So it's like command and order. This is how decision making is taking place. And interesting enough, this is the opposite of what we are a lot talking about in reality, which is participative leadership style, which we want to achieve. Another example to share with you, for example, when I thought about a digital, technological-driven world, I thought about, okay, what are the key skills which organizations need? And I thought about technical skills, system architects, we need more programmers, we need more whatever. And interesting enough, what you can see here, we've been asking the HR part, like 850 people already, and all of the attributes you see here, they are on the soft side. And that does make perfect sense. At the beginning, I was kind of shocked here again, but it makes perfect sense. In a world where information is accessible each and every time, it might be more important to ask the right questions, isn't it? So it is more that you hire a certain attitude over skills. We've been talking about flexibility. I think this is the last message or last point I want to show or I can share with you. Now, we thought, like, okay, if you want to achieve some kind of flexibility, wouldn't be remote working be an easy one to investigate? And if organizations are, let's say, in favor of remote working, then they're at least halfway on the path to do something more flexible. Interesting enough, 50%, it's on everybody's agenda. Most than half of the organizations said, like, yes, we want to play around with more fluid organization. But now, surprisingly, only one-third said, we plan to play around with remote working in the next 3 years. And I found that number pretty surprising and shocking, and we are talking 2019 and not the 80s. And the data is actually from 2018, not the 80s as well, yeah? So flexibility and embracing change, and I cannot lay out the embracing change because it has something to do with the perception and acceptance that people are not doing something wrong with this new freedom. I have a wrong formattation in here. So we netted it all together. All these stories and aspects we brought together in a model that it is easier for people to understand all the holistic picture which we created here. Organizational performance is to a 40% degree affected by business efficiency. 42%, that's a lot. And parallel to that, you might have major investments, divestments, or monopolistic architectures. But this, what you can affect as managers, the organizational performance, 42%. And to a degree of 64%, technology is only contributing to a minor part. It is what you can do with technology differently. And these factors are, I do not know if you're able to read them, data-driven decision-making, flexibility and embracing change, entrepreneurial culture, shared digital vision, critical thinking, learning culture, and open communication. If you have these factors in place, then you are able to unleash a 64% effect, which sums up to a 27% impact on the bottom line. And this is proven data. This is how the study looks like. This is the download link. And this is the article in Forbes, which we generated on top of that. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much. As I said before, my name is Kim. I lead social innovation for a company called Steelcase. We're the global leader in office environments and furniture, and a lot of times when I come to these panels, people ask me, future of work, why is a furniture company talking about the future of work? And I can tell you, of the global companies that we support all throughout the world, the same people and the same issues around workplace productivity, what you just heard, they're coming to us to understand how to drive change. And within the HR industries especially, what we see is people are asked to innovate. People are constantly saying we're in the era of digital transformation, disruption is happening all around us, and these are the environments that a lot of people are left to work in. And what we start to think about is even if a company at its core starts to shift and change towards organizational transformation around the digital, if you don't have a holistic solution, the spaces that you work in and that your employees live in every single day exponentially impact how successful an organization can be as they go through cultural transformation. What I always like to talk to people about is what we call the work experience model. If you can think about the entire work experience for your employees, so often companies will come to us and say, right in the middle, what is the need? What is my organizational ambition? And we'll hear things like, we want to make more money, we want to do it faster, and we're like, okay, but what is really at the core? And when we start to take more of a partnership role or a consulting role with our partners throughout the world, we hear things like we're a manufacturing company that wants to become a tech company. We want to understand how digital transformation can close that information divide between all of our locations. And we want to embed innovation in our company faster and better. And we know as we start to take a look at the work experience, even if you have that organizational need identified around innovation or transformation, what people need to understand is the drivers are those processes and the culture. And that is at its core the people, all of the behaviors that end up making that culture. And then what happens is the tools and the space end up enabling that to happen. Generally, when people come to one of our companies, they'll say, hey, we need an IT solution. Or they'll come to Steelcase and say, hey, we need a spatial solution. Or they'll come to a design thinking consultancy and we'll say, we need design thinking embedded in our organization on the process side. But what they don't do is take a holistic view of what that work experience and understand how all of those start to intersect together. When you start to take a holistic strategic approach to this, you'll see the role that HR plays in this, and you'll see the role that the industry as a whole has in cultural transformation, because without that, none of the organizational ambitions can survive. What we always talk about at Steelcase, as a 100-year-old company, we understood that if we were to shift our leadership model, if we were to model what that future of work looked like, what we needed to do is first build a learning culture or a learning organization where everybody teaches and everybody learns. But in order to do that, we needed to transform our own leadership model. So as a company, we started playing around or prototyping with what leadership looked like at Steelcase and how those spaces either enabled innovation or hindered innovation. And what we saw was our executives, if you were to visit our executives 10 years ago, like many companies, you would have to go to the reception desk, right? And then you'd have to get through security. And then past security, you'd have to get past an executive assistant. And then past the executive assistant, maybe you took an elevator to the top floor of the building where you'd have to go into yet another closed office and potentially a reception area to the actual CEO's office, right? That entire journey starts to tell you how accessible leaders are and how fast innovation can happen within an organization. What we did at Steelcase is we took all of our C-suites, all of our executives, from their top floor offices, and we placed them right on the ground floor in between our Learning Center and our Innovation Center. What happened was pretty transformational. What we started to see, here's our leadership community here. All of a sudden, the pathway that everyone had to travel every single day is the one that this man right in the middle is walking down. And when you start having those informal conversations with executives, when you start having the presence to be able to feel the hierarchy start to be minimized through space, it opened up many different dialogues. I always liken this from the HR perspective. If you were to have a conversation with a CEO or a C-suite executive in your company, what do you feel like before you go in there? Most people are pretty scared, they're nervous. Did I get my presentation perfect? Did I prepare enough? There is so many mental barriers to that access, and then there are so many spatial barriers as well because the culture wasn't embedded. As we started to take a look at that, because the leadership floor and the leadership community was flattened, because there was accessibility there, people had informal conversations. So if I were to have 30 minutes with a leader in the organization formally, sitting down across the way from them, or if I had 15 micro interactions, or these little collisions that happen because we're walking by, saying good morning to each other, or meeting each other in the coffee line and just having a quick chat. By the time those really critical conversations happen with executives and leaders, it changed the dynamic for the organization, and culture started to shift. People's behaviors and interactions with our leaders started to shift. But in order to do that, the entire organization needed to focus on what that culture piece was and how people interacted. We just opened up a couple years ago in Munich, which is where I'm based, our Learning and Innovation Center here. We took those same principles, not from an American perspective, but from a uniquely EMEA perspective, and located in southern Germany, to say, do these same principles apply across the globe? Can we drive innovation with the same leadership principles through a cultural context? And what happened is this Learning Center, which is here in the innovation side where we actually do product design and development, started to shape the culture that we were as we started to launch. We had around 30 different nationalities represented in our Learning and Innovation Center. Our leaders came down to the first floor, and all of a sudden the shift in interactions and transparency was heightened. This changed the dynamic of how people worked, where people worked. All of a sudden we had leaders actually modeling innovative and collaborative behaviors instead of isolated behaviors. So many people can point to those habits of innovation, but unless the leaders actually model that behavior and interact with each of the teams, it never happens quickly. So we always say we don't expect everyone to have the same spaces. We expect companies to provide choice and control to their employees in how they work and where they work. And when that starts to happen, it shifts the dynamic of how people collaborate and their willingness to innovate. We have been on, I would say, a 2-year journey of cultural transformation. When we think about the lives that are impacted every single day, not just by nature of how we design spaces, how our leaders are trained to lead, but how we actually employ that every single day, we've taken a look at all of those aspects of that work experience between integrating innovation methods on the process side, making sure that technology is used as a lever and a tool to support the overall culture of the organization, and we definitely take a look at how space supports that as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon. You allow that I sit because we try to give the stage to others, the Fortune 500 and like worldwide top academics crowd our stages to exchange, and we as the Global Peter Drucker Forum, we tend to stay in the background per se, providing the forum. And now we picked this topic for this year, ecosystems managing in a networked world, to enable the exchange of business leaders and management thinkers on this very topic. And then after a while we realized, hang on, we ourselves, we are such an ecosystem. So this is how I came today to the conclusion. I won't give a talk as such, I will tell a story. I'll tell the story of the Drucker Forum. Basically, we realized in the beginning today, when we met, we realized here is the two legacy companies, and we are the startup, right? So we are 10 years old, approaching the 11th year, and our founder was 63 and just retiring from an IBM executive job when he founded the startup, the Drucker Forum. But he didn't do this alone. They were sitting together, a couple of people in Claremont at the university, the Drucker School, the late wife of Peter Drucker, and people from Harvard Business Review, from the Financial Times, from Harvard Business School, and a couple of others, thinking how to commemorate the 100th birthday or anniversary of the birthday of Peter Drucker. So they thought, well, let's do a conference. Not kind of a really novel idea, but on the other hand, they were to invite the first and foremost thinkers, management thinkers of the time. And there is a Thinkers 50 rating where you have the 50 best rated thinkers in the world. And they were to invite a couple of those. And as it were, they came. So they had this first conference in Vienna. But before, they had to convince someone to actually organize that. People were sitting there like journalists, professors, like managers, but none of them a conference organizer. So as it were, they asked Richard Straub of IBM, because he was partly based in Vienna, Peter Drucker's birthplace, if he couldn't put himself to it. So he said, well, I was thinking to do something else during my retirement. So they were actually bragging about, and okay, so he said, well, okay, I commit to do that, but we all have to help together. So this crowd sitting there agreed, okay, well, of course, we'll help together, spread the word and get the word out. This is how it came that Harvard Business Review paid for our advertising, and that huge companies invested in sponsorship to get the thing going. So the first Drucker Forum convened in Vienna. Beautiful success, very inspiring, everyone really happy. So Richard Straub sat down with all of them and said, well, it was so great, let's have dinner, but thank you very much, goodbye. Big eyes, well, that can't be it. This was so beautiful, it must continue. And Richard Straub said, you know, I plan to do something else, something different with my retirement. I'm not a conference organizer, and same story. So everyone went on. No, I mean, come on, this has to continue. It was so beautiful, it was so inspiring. And eventually he gave in and said the same words again. But then everyone here has to help together. Of course, the crowd agreed. And this is how it came that still to date, in the 11th year, none of our speakers with daily fees of 20,000 dollars plus, like as a day rate, and up, would not be paid, none of them. This is how it appears that still, to date, the Harvard Business Review is paying for our advertising. Financial Times doing the same, and more to come. And what actually developed here, it was not actually managed there, it developed by itself, that people sat together who were basically business competitors. Even journalists and HBR and Financial Times, they basically also crowd the same market. Still, they got together for an idea, for the idea to develop management as a discipline further into a future, because all of them were aware that this is what would be needed. But none of them individually would know how. But they thought together they could probably develop some inspiration and get to a point. And today we still don't know. We still don't know what is the better way or the best way to manage. Probably there is not one, and that's why we continue to have those discussions and invite people from all over the world, business leaders and academia, to discuss. And if this is the business model to develop management, then I guess we still might have a long way to go as the Drucker Forum. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much to all three of you for sharing your very different ideas and approaches. But I think in the end, it is a combination of all these three topics to make companies more successful and to help to push this kind of change management forward. Because it's not about buying new technologies. I think the most important part is to get all the people in the boat and move them forward. And regarding this, I would have a question to you, Kim. You presented Steelcase, and I felt it is a very innovative company already. You're like the shining star between many others. But if you think on a scale from 0 to 100%, what would you say? Where are you today?
Yeah, I think that I always like to think that we're so far ahead, but at the same time, we're testing on ourselves. When we think about what the future of work looks like and means, the same disruptions that are happening in the world are the same things that we're researching and exploring to be able to shape the spaces that all of us live and work in every single day. When I think of that leadership community that we went through in this process, I mean, some of our executives were all on board, and they're like, absolutely, sign me up. I'll be able to try anything. I want to see what this looks like, and if it shifts the actual outcomes for businesses. Others were like, I don't want to leave my office. Don't make me go on the first floor. And I think it's part of this process of understanding the ebb and flow of how people interact and being able to do a few of those moonshot tests. Our CEO actually, his little pod where he does his focus work is just a tiny, tiny pod. And it's just enough space for him to read and reflect and do some heads down work. When we put that on our floor in our main showroom, it was made of 2x4s and plywood. We were just seeing if he would actually go and work in that space and see what people reacted and see how his behavior shifted. So because all of these are actually learning and innovation centers, so much of what we do is, yes, absolutely ahead of the field. And some of the things we're just trying along with our partners on the journey. We do active learning classrooms. We do healthcare environments. All of these places, I would say we have so many great global partners to be able to see and understand at the individual first, using a human-centered lens to say, what are the needs? We don't expect everyone to be on the far end of innovation, and we don't expect everyone to be on the traditional side of companies. But everyone needs to be able to chart their own path and have choices when they start to look at what the pace of innovation is and how they're going to operate in that culture.
Thank you very much. Regarding that, what would be your idea or your suggestion for companies who are just starting with this topic? How do you kick this off? What were your first steps for Steelcase?
Yeah, so many people think these conversations start from the C-suite, or just the CEO is saying we need to go through a transformation. I would say where it becomes incredibly successful is when the HR leaders are at the core of what this is, because it's all about people every single day. And when they're part of the cultural transformation and building the strategy of what people need, what kind of culture is going to exist, for us, we knew that the culture we wanted to foster was one of learning. So in order to do that, we worked with our HR teams to say, we're not going to do performance reviews anymore. We took away the annual performance review as a process tool because we knew it wasn't enhancing or accelerating the outcomes for our employees. They became a key and critical business partner. And when you can have all of those people that impact culture in that conversation and driving the strategy, then it becomes holistic and lasting.
Sounds great. Thank you. Any other opinions on that topic from you, Isabella, Joachim?
I actually wanted to ask you, Joachim, following the presentation with the research, what would be the internal approach at Oracle? Like, how do you go about managing change, decision-making, and transformation?
Yeah. So I'm perfectly with Kim. So you're the perfect example what you're doing with Steelcase for one of the factors which we've been laying out, that this is meant by embracing change. Change is nothing bad, not necessarily. Some changes are bad, but many changes are good. You just need to be brave enough to do so. And this can be, and I think what you said is, I'm also with you, that you said that it's multi-angle in an organization. It's not just top-down, somebody has a bright idea on top and everybody needs to follow. It can be bottom-up, and maybe to add, I think it can be from various aspects. And for example, we have a couple of great successes. So when we do speak to organization, we do not speak to IT necessarily anymore. We do speak about a true transformation of their business. Businesses are, can I say, scared on how to secure their market positioning on the long run. So this is what we're talking about. What do we need to have in place to secure the business? And this has definitely a people component. But with this change, a lot of uncertainty and fear comes hand in hand. And so the question is, how are you truly able to do something which changes organization? What we have really great examples and successes, for example, where we gave big organizations like Deutsche Bahn, it was a great example, tiny little software pieces. You could say an app solving minor things, not the big picture. But with this usage of this app, they've been entirely changing their mindset about how our perception as Oracle, as one big vendor, as being a partner of change. And they've been accepting, and then the second aspect was that they've been truly accepting, this piece of technology can do something good for me. Just a tiny little thing, but if it can do the tiny little thing, it might be able to do more and more and more. And this kind of really initiated a snowball effect, an entirely changed perception and culture to a certain degree, not entirely, but to a certain degree.
If you allow, I would disrupt the moderator for a bit and ask another question. I guess you tried that out before internally, and do I understand correctly that you just changed the conversation? Is this correct?
The truth is, we did not try it out internally. Actually, this
wow.
sounds better if we would have, but it was not planned. Actually, it is based on some kind of technology which we are able to do, and we needed to do something very individual for an organization, and this was more a side effect. We didn't plan that, but then we found out, okay, if we are doing that, boom, suddenly there it was. It acted like a catalyst in the organization. It was not planned. But then it kind of, from there, we tried it out and give it a little bit more structure and a consulting approach. But this is how it is now. But all started with a tech piece, as you can imagine.
To me, it seems that the legacy companies tend to move away, correct me if I'm wrong, tend to move away from just selling stuff, right? You became a partner,
yes,
right?
Yes,
absolutely.
You
became a partner.
A lot of people, when they walk through our doors for the first time, they're looking for desks and chairs, right? But very quickly do they realize kind of the driver behind why they're asking the question. And I think as we start to globally shift, not just our industry, but all industries, and this is where the ecosystem comes in, that we understand that these are not all independent silos that we have to exist in. What happens within the IT or tech side is also happening within the space side, which is also happening in the culture side. And all of us need to be working together to drive the best solution for each of the organizations that we're supporting. So when you go down to that human level again, absolutely. The people that are selling not just things or widgets or experiences, it's the integration of all of those, it's the sense making, that's where the value is. You can have different pieces and parts, but without the sense, it just doesn't make sense for us, it doesn't make sense for our partners or the organizations that we serve.
Thank you. I think there was a question already.
Yeah.
Yes, that sounds too good to me. We have seen in your study, Joachim, that embracing change is not everybody's darling, not everybody's favorite to do so. Changing to a business ecosystem logic is even more radical. And we are here in an HR environment. So is everybody really prepared to go this step? You have said it was a side effect for Oracle. Is everybody prepared for it? To do even this more radical, not only new work, but this more radical approach, and especially is HR prepared to play a significant role within this process, or will HR only be the spectators? My English is, I don't know, at the edge of the playground, looking how the change happens by others.
I would say definitely a big yes and a big no at the same time. A big yes, I think there's more constructiveness out there than we sometimes think it is. As I said, there's a lot of perception and awareness that something needs to change. But yet the big no for me would be nobody does really have an idea what really to tackle first, and which would be a big effect to the organization. And actually, I think this is why we are, let's say, presenting the study in various formats, and why the interest is so big, because there is none research like this out, which kind of gives us first orientation and first proof points stating, okay, if we adjust this, we will have an effect on productivity, on bottom line. And this would give at least some kind of orientation also to HR, for example, either to discuss with management, are we on the right strategy, question mark, or I do have idea ABC, project ABC in my head, and now they could argue, we should realize that because it perfectly plays into factor 3, 5, and 7, and thus we are able to support the bottom line. And this is the first good orientation framework, which we did not have so far.
I would also try and answer from what we see from the conferences and then the panels that we do, is that currently I don't think you can say it's HR driving transformation, or it's marketing driving transformation, or it's the IT, or what we see is that it's personalities the person who will take action will drive the change. And this can be basically, I don't know, anyone. Probably somewhere in the C-level arena, but we didn't see a typical field where it would originate. It's very, very much, very diverse. I'm not sure if we're running out of time. Are we?
Any other questions or opinions from the audience? Anyone? No. Okay. So
everyone.
Yeah, so what I feel is that, as I said before, you can buy the fanciest technology, you can be in a very nice building, you can have the best benefits for your employees, but in the end, it's the people that count, and I think that's it's the sub-headline of today's discussion. And yeah, if there are no more questions, I would like to say thank you in the name of the 3 fantastic participants today, Kim, Isabella, and Joachim. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you.